Now, moving on, we come to specification 4, which asks us to outline the function of a nephron and its associated blood vessels. This specification focuses on 3 main points. First, the role of the glomerulus in filtering water, glucose, urea, and ions from the blood. Second, the role of the nephron tubules in reabsorbing all of the glucose, some of the ions, and most of the water back into the blood. Third, the formation of urine, which contains urea, excess water, and excess ions. We do not need to go into the detailed mechanisms for this. So, essentially, this specification is all about understanding how the nephron and its blood vessels work together to filter blood, reclaim useful substances, and produce urine. Now, let's talk about one of the main functions of the nephron, which is blood filtration. First, regarding blood vessels and blood supply, arterioles branch off from the renal artery and enter each nephron, forming a network of capillaries called the glomerulus, which sits inside the Bowman's capsule. Next comes the filtration process. High blood pressure in the glomerulus pushes small molecules out of the blood and into the Bowman's capsule, forming what we call the filtrate. The substances filtered from the blood include water, salts, glucose, and urea. As the filtrate moves along the nephron, the useful substances like glucose, some water, and certain salts are reabsorbed back into the blood. The remaining urea, excess water, and salts continue through the nephron and eventually form urine, which is transported to the bladder for storage. Now, the role of the glomerulus in filtration is very important. First of all, the glomerulus is a cluster of tiny capillaries that brings blood into the nephron. Its main function is to filter small molecules from the blood, including water, glucose, urea, and ions. These filtered substances then pass from the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. Together, the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule form the renal corpuscle, which is where the process of blood filtration begins. Blood in the glomerulus is under high pressure, which helps force these substances out of the blood and into the Bowman's capsule, forming the initial filtrate. This filtrate will then continue along the nephron, where useful substances are reabsorbed back into the blood, and the remaining waste proceeds to form urine. Next, we have the process of reabsorption, which is the role of the nephron in reclaiming useful substances from the filtrate. After filtration, the filtrate travels through the nephron tubules, including the proximal convoluted tubule, loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule. These sections are involved in selective reabsorption and secretion, adjusting the composition of the filtrate as it moves along the nephron. During reabsorption, first, all of the glucose is reabsorbed back into the blood. Secondly, some of the ions are reabsorbed as needed. And, thirdly, most of the water is reabsorbed into the surrounding capillaries. Water reabsorption occurs by osmosis, where water moves across a semipermeable membrane from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. This process is essential for maintaining water balance in the body and helps produce concentrated urine. In short, the proximal and distal convoluted tubules and the loop of Henle carefully control the movement of glucose, salts, and water, ensuring the body retains what it needs while the remaining waste continues on to form urine that eventually passes into the ureter. Reabsorption is the process by which the nephron returns useful substances from the filtrate back into the blood. This ensures that important nutrients and water are not lost while the remaining waste continues on to form urine. The first substance reabsorbed is glucose. This takes place in the proximal convoluted tubule, where all glucose is actively transported back into the blood. This guarantees that no glucose is lost in the urine. Next, we have salts, which are reabsorbed primarily in the loop of Henle and the collecting duct. Salts move back into the blood by diffusion, helping the body maintain a proper balance of electrolytes. Finally, water is reabsorbed in both the loop of Henle and the collecting duct. Water follows the salts by osmosis, and the amount reabsorbed in the collecting duct adjusts according to the body's needs. This process is crucial for maintaining overall water balance and producing urine with the right concentration. So, if we look at the main components of reabsorption, we can see how the nephron handles different substances. As listed here, glucose is reabsorbed entirely in the proximal convoluted tubule. This ensures that all the energy the body needs from glucose is returned to the blood and none is lost in urine. Salts are reabsorbed in different parts of the nephron, mainly in the loop of Henle. This helps maintain the body's electrolyte balance by returning necessary ions to the bloodstream. Water is reabsorbed in both the loop of Henle and the collecting duct. Water moves by osmosis, following the reabsorbed salts, and the amount reabsorbed can change depending on the body's needs, helping to maintain hydration and regulate urine concentration. On the other hand, urea is not reabsorbed. It remains in the filtrate and eventually leaves the body in the urine. This is important because urea is a waste product that the body needs to get rid of. In short, the nephron carefully reclaims glucose, salts, and water while allowing urea and other wastes to be excreted, maintaining the body's internal balance. The next step is the formation of urine. Substances that are not reabsorbed remain in the nephron and move into the collecting duct. This remaining fluid gradually becomes urine, which contains urea, excess water, and excess ions. Once formed, the urine flows from the collecting ducts into the bladder, where it is stored until it is ready to be expelled from the body. Now, let's look at the overall function of the nephron, focusing on blood filtration and reabsorption. Each nephron works closely with a network of blood vessels to filter the blood, reabsorb useful substances, and form urine. The glomerulus is a knot of capillaries located inside Bowman's capsule. Its role is to filter small molecules from the blood, including water, glucose, urea, and ions, which then pass into Bowman's capsule. Together, the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule form the renal corpuscle, where the process of blood filtration begins. After filtration, the fluid, called filtrate, moves through the nephron tubules. Reabsorption takes place mainly in the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. These tubules, along with the distal convoluted tubule, carry out selective reabsorption and secretion, adjusting the filtrate as it moves along the nephron to form urine. During this process, all of the glucose, some of the ions, and most of the water are reabsorbed back into the blood through the surrounding capillaries. The substances that are not reabsorbed continue along the nephron into the collecting duct. The remaining fluid becomes urine, containing urea, excess water, and excess ions, which eventually flows to the bladder for storage until it is excreted from the body. So, let's take a look at this diagram, which shows filtration in the nephron. Filtration is the process by which blood is filtered in the kidney. In the diagram, you can see blood entering the glomerulus, a network of capillaries, under high pressure from the renal artery. This pressure forces small substances, such as water, salts, and urea, out of the blood and into the Bowman's capsule. The fluid collected in Bowman's capsule, called the filtrate, then moves into the nephron tubules for the next steps in urine formation, reabsorption and secretion. Overall, the kidney's main function is to filter unwanted substances from the blood and produce urine, helping the body remove waste and maintain a stable internal environment. And now, let's look at reabsorption. Reabsorption is the process by which the nephron reclaims water, ions, and valuable molecules like glucose from the filtrate and returns them to the bloodstream. In the diagram, you can see the nephron, the functional unit of the kidney, illustrating how this process works. Filtration first occurs in the glomerulus, where small molecules are filtered from the blood into Bowman's capsule. Selective reabsorption then takes place mainly in the proximal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle, where essential substances are reclaimed. Glucose is actively reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule, ensuring that all filtered glucose is returned to the blood in a healthy kidney. Salts are reabsorbed by diffusion, and water follows by osmosis throughout the tubule system. Finally, the remaining fluid in the collecting duct, which contains urea and any excess water and salts, becomes urine. This urine then flows into the ureter for transport to the bladder. In short, reabsorption allows the kidney to recover important substances, maintain blood composition, and produce concentrated urine for waste removal.